Welcome everyone. My name is Frederick Winsness and I am with NetHope. And I want to welcome everyone to yet another of the NetHope Solutions Center webinars. Today we are very pleased to have PATH and Unit4 talk to us about ERP and the ERP mind shift for NGOs. And before we get underway, I'm going to go over the regular housekeeping rules. We want to keep everybody muted while you're not talking. There will be an opportunity to potentially come off mute later on, but just to reduce background noise, please keep your lines muted. We do want to make this as interactive as possible, so please open up the chat window. There's a little chat icon on the top right on your screen, and monitor the conversations there and also submit your questions. We may take clarifying questions as we go along, but also we'll do a question and answer session towards the end of the hour today. And we will also, towards the end, do a webinar satisfaction poll, and we'd certainly appreciate you answering those few questions to help us improve this series over time. And as always, we are recording this session today. We will send you a follow-up email with links to that recording and all the collateral, so you can share with colleagues and for those that might be interested in the topic to review further. So I want to quickly introduce our speakers today. We have Jim Clayman, who's the Vice President of North American Marketing at Unit4, and Erik Arnold, Chief Information Officer at PATH. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim to do a little bit further introduction of Erik. So go ahead, Jim.
Thanks, Frederick. And good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Clayman, the VP of North American Marketing for Unit4 Software. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity to introduce today's speaker, Erik Arnold. Erik is the Chief Information Officer at PATH, an international nonprofit that helps countries around the world tackle their greatest health needs. Erik and PATH are customers of Unit4, so we're proud to be a sponsor of today's webinar. For those of you who don't know who Unit4 is, we're an ERP software provider that helps nonprofits raise more funds, achieve program success, maintain accountability, and improve organizational efficiency. Some of our other nonprofit customers include Save the Children, the Nature Conservancy, and Heifer International. So a little background on Erik. Erik has over 25 years of IT leadership in business technology and systems integration, and he's passionate about applying technology solutions to the development sector. He sits on the boards of directors of NetHope, the Foundation for Healthy Generations, and Pet Partners. He also serves on the advisory boards for Insight NGO, the Salesforce Foundation, and 501 Commons. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to introduce today's featured speaker, Erik Arnold.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks, Frederick, and also thank all of you for taking the time. I'm going to tell the story today about how we framed an ERP project at PATH as organizational transformation with our program staff and with our donors. I don't pretend to have perfect answers for everyone, but hopefully this will be interesting and helpful and start a good discussion. I'm planning on leaving ample time at the end for us to have a discussion or for me to field questions, but please do feel free to send questions via chat or interrupt me if you have clarifying questions as I go along. So first of all, just a couple of words about PATH. We talk about our work as driving transformative innovation to save lives, and PATH is an organization that strives to take market-based approaches to drive transformation in global health, and we do that across 5 different platforms with vaccine and drug development, with diagnostics tooling, medical device development, and system and services innovations. At any one time, PATH will have about 200 technologies and products in its development pipeline, And we do all of our work in partnership with public and private organizations. And so we have an annual revenue of about $320 million, 1,600 employees worldwide across 48 physical offices. And those 1,600 people partner with ministries of health, with pharmaceuticals, with universities, with other nonprofits, with manufacturing organizations, with logistics companies, you name it. Everything we do, we look to introduce durable solutions into difficult places. This year, we also happen to be celebrating our 40th anniversary, so PATH has been around for a little bit. I joined PATH 8 years ago, and when I joined the organization, technology was a tool, not a strategy. There were 47 disparate systems around the organization, a lot of legacy. Our core financials were on a package that was implemented 14 years ago, and a lot of the organization ran on Excel and Access solutions that worked really well when the organization was, 50, 100, 200 people, but didn't really scale to the 1,600 people and global reach that we had. So we had a lot of very small departmental applications with no real data strategy or reporting strategy, and no real sense of the value of strategic data for decision making. So as a consequence, there was a real heavy reliance on people and heroics to get things done. There was a lot of noise in the system and no real economy of scale in our G&A cost structure. So as the organization grew and expanded, our overhead grew and expanded because we needed to throw people at the problem because the people were pushing paper or pushing data through disconnected systems. So first priority on my first day, instructions were clear. Finance needs a new software tool. PATH needed a new ERP, and that's easy, right? We can just select a package and implement it. And to do that, you just need to rationalize all your systems, standardize all your processes, the roles and responsibilities in the organization, define and prioritize efficiencies that drive out all that noise. Need to figure out what you're measuring in your business, what metrics and reporting you're going to be using. You need to understand questions about, why are you asking questions about business performance? What are the things you really need to know that you're working well, and it all needs to work globally. So yeah, not so easy. And as those of us on this call probably already know, good technology amplifies bad process. So, on that first day, it was pretty clear to me, IT can't carry the water alone, right? This wasn't an IT project. This wasn't even an IT and finance project. By ourselves, we couldn't drive the right amount of change in the organization to implement something that not only would have achieved some of the business performance goals, but also would have resonated with our program staff. And we needed to drive broader buy-in. So, taking stock. The reality is, we needed non-traditional approaches. So, as a global health organization, and in the way that we do our product development, we recognize that business models are fundamentally changing to meet the new global reality that we all live in. While PATH has a long record of successful private sector partnerships and high-level engagement with governments and influential global organizations, and has proven their technical expertise in the market and built extensive networks and connections at the local, country, and global levels, we're seeing a huge shift to innovation for global health taking place in the field, donor money flowing into the field. So we're focusing on capacity building, we're focusing on that local innovation and finding ways that we can find solutions, incubate and help those solutions scale wherever they may come. And that's, that requires a different and diverse group of funding, not just from foundations and government development organizations, but also from corporations, and some corporations that maybe don't necessarily track logically back to global health. So the project for us, really wasn't about better software for PATH operations. It's about accelerating access and promising global health technology innovations by expanding our product development and introduction partnerships with local innovators, right? We really reframed what this whole ERP project was to not be about how we're improving PATH operations, but how those improvements would really help drive our ability to implement and explore new and different business models and funding mechanisms. So in order to drive this transformation that was happening externally, we needed to transform internally. And the regular approaches that were working until today for how ERP projects were being approached, weren't enough for us to align towards for how we were thinking about PATH needed to work in the future. So with the fact that the funding strategies were changing, that our business models were changing, the volatility that we saw in the economy and how compliance criteria is continuing to shift, we recognized the need that we needed to change norms for how we thought about delivering impact and change our business models to adjust to that. So pretty early on, as we started looking at what our current state processes were, this project was really doing two things. One, it really needed to meet the needs of the finance and administrative parts of the organization and do all the things that any ERP project needs to do. But it needed to do it in such a way that we were attracting the buy-in and participation from our program folks who were working in the field. So we started framing the project around program impact and organization transformation, and talked quite a bit about how this would help us discover and explore new product innovation opportunities. It would help us adjust more quickly to market opportunities. It would help us ramp up with new programs and align to other PATH transformation initiatives around looking at our project lifecycle or our global framework. It's allowing us to offer new service delivery options as we look at how to look at a centralized global organization. How might we provide services from that organization to new local entities, and allow us to shift some focus from HQ into the field, and then ultimately think about how we're tying our business performance metrics directly back to our global health goals. And what really resonated for people was when we started talking to them about data and the potential availability of new data for programs to measure their efficacy, and for us to aggregate information across multiple programs and marry that with our other operational data so that we could tell a much more compelling story about PATH's effectiveness and impact. So specifically for the ERP project, we started thinking about the end, and what did success look like, and ran a visioning exercise with folks in the organization to really start talking about what did people really see in their roles would be a benefit for them. And that extended not just into organizational leadership or the financial teams based in headquarters offices, but also pretty deeply out into our field staff. And I'll talk in a moment how we built the network and how we're leveraging it today. But the project built capacity to take on backfill for our project-based staff to participate in the requirements very, very early on. So we had participation from 19 different countries, and finance staff to project administration staff to country program leaders to program officers to people in IT and external consultants and even donors and other partner organizations participated. So pretty quickly we tried to rally folks around what does a solution look like in the future for PATH, and how might that be enabling for someone who is in a field-based project role. So, of course, we have a lot of leaders in the organization that have been involved in the project from the start, and those are folks that are from across operations and across our programs in different countries. They've had to make a lot of trade-off decisions on behalf of the organization, have played an essential role in leading peers through the transformation change curve. But we also focus deeper in the organization in creating this role of change agents. These representatives were selected from different roles, different offices by organizational leaders to be the subject matter experts and change agents for the project. They're PATH employees who are subject matter experts in different areas, and as I said, began their participation early in the requirement stage, and they've been an integral part of all stages of the project so far, from requirements through selection, through design, into configuration, and then soon into test and deployment. We provided backfill money to make this possible, and we've also invested in bringing them together physically as a team at different stages in the product development. So I think they've all been together physically 3 times, and we have that planned for another couple times coming forward. Their role also will be to prepare, train, and be that first line of support for their peers in their local locations when the system launches. And they'll also participate on the sustainment team past go live when we operationalize the system for long-term use. So, donors. Our donors also believe in the power of organizations like ours to affect transformation. And while donors are pretty typically hyper-focused on it being about bringing our overhead rates down and spending less donor money, managing our business performance, that efficiency and cost saving story. And we tend to be focused on transparency of operations, compliance, and audit. Really, more importantly, it's about what we can do with better data, with consolidated information, with better data quality, to measure, to understand, and improve our delivery. And so we had metrics and have basic ROI defined around numbers 1 and 2 there, and framed number 3 in the market-based approaches that PATH excels in, and then used that to drive support and interest from some of our key donors. So we're really trying to lead with our success in this project being defined by making smart decisions about investing in innovation and intervention and executing on our projects, rather than leading with talking about the ROI story. So we're not talking about necessarily a overhead reduction. We do expect there will be cost shifting and some cost recovery in the course of this project. That's not the main story for us. And that has actually played pretty well with some of our donors, and we found that a number of different foundations and organizations are going through this very same transformation, and the same kind of collaboration that happens amongst nonprofits when we have this conversation started happening with our donors as well. So to summarize and get this into the Q&A part of the meeting, really just 5 super high-level things that I tried to bring across here. One was thinking about starting with the end in mind and what success looks like, really focusing on the project being about program value, and then from there rethink your operations value. We really tried to take a holistic approach, recognizing that external transformation to respond to the macroeconomic changes and our business model changes needed to start with transformation internally. And so we made that case and led the change inside the organization. Not all ERPs are created equally, and the decision for what you choose can impact what you envision. PATH is a very project-centric organization. 97% of our funding is restricted, and only a very small percentage is from individual or corporate contribution. And so we needed a system that was very good at project accounting and supported what we wanted to do with data integration with other systems. And it's got to be cloud, right? So, you know, we're lucky enough to live at a time when innovation in technology is happening extremely rapidly. It's happening more rapidly than the ability for governments and for organizations like ours to accept. But cloud-based solutions is the way that we're, really the only way that we're going to be able to drive transformative impact at scale. And so we only have today, I think, at the end of this project, we'll have a single system on-prem, and that will be the last one to go next year. And then lastly, it's our field programs are really where the vision and reality meet, and putting any kind of ERP work in the context of broader organizational transformation was really critical for us, and helped us get buy-in from the organization and from our donors, and from top down, from every one of our different programmatic leaders and the different donors that we've talked to about this. This is a top priority and something that we are transparent about and measured against as we make progress through the implementation. So I think with that, I'm going to pause and give folks a chance to ask questions or discuss.
Well, thank you very much, Erik. Very insightful, and generated a whole host of questions out there. So we can go through the questions in the order they came in, and feel free to keep putting questions in the chat window, and we'll get to them one by one. So there are some interesting observations of some of the statements you made earlier. The first question that came in was going from quote-unquote spreadsheets to ERP. How did you get buy-in from management and users to get started with this transformation?
A couple ways. And it actually took quite a long time. And I would say that some of the resistance that we had early on for this project in making this transformation came from within the finance organization, those who were using the spreadsheets. And there was quite a lot of work that we did from the the top of the finance organization down into its full structure. So we thought about what our finance organization could look like. What should a finance organization look like, in the future for PATH, and brought in leadership to build some of that structure, look at the capabilities we have, and start the very painful process to take people through that change. Some people very excited are by and large embracing it, and a few folks who are very critical to supporting the way things are going today weren't so excited. And being clear with people where they have an opportunity, and if they are choosing not to take that opportunity, then perhaps this isn't the right organization going forward. So in short, we had to make some hard organizational decisions, but we got management buy-in to do that by talking about the value of the data, and showed in one of our main projects around malaria control what consolidated strategic data might look like if you aggregated the information from an operational perspective and married that with the data that was being collected from our programs, did some transformations on that, worked with the monitoring and evaluation team about what questions they wanted to ask, and then presented that through Tableau. That created a really compelling story and helped a lot of people in the organization grok what strategic data could do for them. And so that got a lot of the management buy-in to make those hard organizational decisions.
And I can imagine that getting buy-in from the field and the implementers. Your discussion around this change agent had a major impact on getting buy-in, kind of at the end user standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. When we kicked the project off, it's absolutely critical for us that we have country representation from our different field offices, and then different roles within those countries. So we needed to select key people in our key areas of operation, and we're project driven, right? No one has a bench where they have their staff sitting around. We don't have the luxury of a lot of unrestricted funding to do much of that, and that's where we needed to get some separate restricted funding to provide to our program staff to participate on this, and that was a lot of long hours with in looking at how we pull some restricted funding from overhead, or how we talk to some donors to allow that to happen. But there's no way a project like this would be successful without getting that buy-in and having those people really dedicated to the project. These are key resources on the program side as well, and so those are pretty precious.
Exactly. So I also want to thank everybody for all the questions that are streaming in here. I'm trying to stay abreast of that, and let's try to get through as many as possible. And another question that came in, Erik, was when implementing the ERP system with the field, what pressure did that represent relative to internet connectivity in your field offices?
Yeah. So as a precursor to this project, we measured the internet connectivity in each one of our locations. We defined some standards for what we needed to hit in each office based on number of people in the office and location. What kind of bandwidth did it need? We're lucky enough that we do most of our work in cities and towns and villages that have some level of fiber, and we don't rely on VSAT in many locations at all. So we set those standards, and then we implemented Cisco Meraki devices in each one of our offices, and implemented traffic shaping in each one of our offices so that we could control a bit in conjunction with reviewing and releasing some updates to our acceptable use policy to give us a fighting chance to preserve bandwidth for online applications. So We use Salesforce globally and have about 500 Salesforce licenses that are used in every location. We're also big users of O365 suite of products, Okta, and a number of other online tools. And while it's not perfectly fast everywhere, it does seem to basic functionality does work. Unit4 is a new product for us, and so performance testing in those locations is going to be part of the plan come Q3.
Excellent. A question directly for you came in. Do you think this project would have been possible or successful without having a CIO?
Yeah, interesting question. So I think that as I said, when I came to the organization, the project was handed to me, right? This is obviously a technology project. We just need a new tool, and this is really a transformation project. And so my initial role was to help the organization understand that this was a transformation project and really drive change and find ways to get buy-in, find partnerships within the organization where we could show examples and successful digital transformations and have program people come back in and talk about the value. So I firmly believe that you need that kind of change leader, and I think that where the industry is right now, that's often the CIO. I will also say that as this project has evolved and as we made the leadership changes in finance and matured the project and project approach, much of this project is being driven by finance, and I think that's incredibly healthy.
Yeah, and having a broad team in all functional areas, in addition to up and down the chain, I can imagine is critical to success here.
Yeah, if people have heard the adage, projects happen to me, by me, for me, or with me, and in talking about how people experience projects, a project happens to me, meaning the question above about how do you get people to switch from spreadsheets to online tools? You're moving my cheese. Happening for me, you just toss it over the fence and, hey, IT, this is a new software tool. Go into install a new ERP for PATH and let us know when you're done. By me, when you get frustrated that IT is not doing what you want them to do, you run off and try and do it yourself or hire an external firm to come in and do it for you. Or with me, where it's really a partnership and the organization's working well together. And I think we've finally gotten ourselves to the with me stage on this.
Fantastic. I think we'll have to quote you on that in some follow-up postings here. Great. So one concrete question was, how many change agents were recruited per country and in total?
That is hilarious because I thought I had that information right in front of me, and I don't. I know, so when we have people in the room, the entire group, for a 1,600-person organization, we have about 40 people in the room. And that's not all from the field. There are probably 15 of those that are U.S.-based. 15, 20 of those that are U.S.-based, and the rest are from the field.
Great. How are you planning on measure and report on success? Will it be against previous pain points or organizational capability?
Yeah, and this is really a tricky one, right? Because if you're talking about really success for this is that we're able to be more nimble as an organization, that our systems can support our new business models, that we're able to direct more money into new innovations. That's all a little bit soft. It's hard to baseline some of that. So we're we're doing some baselining. We're also doing some hard metrics about, hard costs on what certain kind of functions and roles and processes take. So we'll have a blend of both. But it's a good point that, for some of those softer stuff, it's going to be a little bit of Kentucky windage in saying where we were and how far we've come.
Exactly. How did you balance this major project with other projects also requiring heavy change management, and how do you prevent change fatigue?
Yeah, so along with this project, we're also doing 4 other major transformation initiatives across PATH. Not one of them is as well resourced and organized as this, and so we're trying to use this structure where we've actually formed a change team. We've identified those change agents. We've identified mechanisms to support funding of people on the project. We've established good communication patterns, good project governance, and use all of that as a model for the other initiatives. And so there's recognition in the executive team that the other initiatives may be an equal amount of work and aren't as richly resourced. And so they're I think where we're suffering on those is we don't have as crisp project management and change teams on those projects, but we do have the same governance structure across all 5 major initiatives. And so the governance teams, the steering teams for each of those meet across the projects and try to ensure that the projects remain linked and we're not working cross purposes. The change fatigue is an interesting question. I feel we're overloading staff in some different areas by not sequencing work. We have many priorities and lots of good ideas, and in a mission-based organization, you want to do as many of those as possible, because if you can get them done, you're creating more impact. But continuing to launch projects and not finish projects is disastrous. And so we're trying to work with the teams to communicate, identify and communicate where folks are getting overloaded and starting to push back on how we sequence the work coming out of each initiative. We had an enterprise governance process in place that really helped us with this, and it's standard enterprise project portfolio and prioritization and communication mechanism. And for whatever reasons, it didn't resonate with the people it needed to resonate with, and so we need to find a new solution that people want to use, and then we'll take it from there.
So Erik, there's been a lot of questions around timing here, so I think I'm going to accelerate that sequence of questions. What was the timeline here, and how long did it take?
So we did the RFP process, and system selection happened mid last year, and then we started the actual engagement for design in December. The holidays hit, and so we've been working this whole first half of the year on design and build. We're just coming to the end of the build phase now and getting into test and deployment. We're planning on deploying the end of this year and deploying globally. We're going to do a big bang approach across our 48 offices, replace the QuickBooks systems that are in place in our individual country programs with the single solution, and then replace the system that's in use in the US, which is Dynamics SL. Over the next few months, we're also going to be focusing on the integration of Business World with other PATH systems like Salesforce and our HRIS system. And so as we come through the the build process and get into the testing phase and testing the workflows, within business world. We'll also be integrating it with within our system architecture and testing the data flows and end-to-end workflows across system, and that will be late Q3, early Q4. Then lots and lots of training.
Yeah. There was you brought up how you position this up against the donors, and the question was, in discussion with donors, how does the topic of ERP come up? Is it a discussion around efficient management and resource management?
No, I mean, it does certainly come up. What I found is that the donor's perspective is there's no floor in how inexpensively you should be able to run your organization, and it's your responsibility to get as quickly as you can to a lower overhead rate. And then from there, it takes a lot of work to talk about you actually need to invest in your organization to have an efficient, effective organization. So that's a lot of back and forth, and that's exhausting for everybody. So while part of how we talk to donors is certainly that there is a cost efficiency play here. We really tried to lead with, this helps our programs execute. This helps us make better decisions about where to make next investments. This helps us look across our programs and efficiently use like resources on like activities. That's gives us a platform upon which we can aggregate programmatic information, program performance information from 3 different, a maternal child health program and a vaccine program and a malaria control program in the same country, and think about costs and resources, and come back, that next proposal will be more efficient, right? So that resonated with donors.
Yeah, so a direct impact on program execution rather than talking about some corporate overhead.
Yeah, trying to have it as an opportunity cost conversation is tricky, because still, of course, everybody wants hard numbers and what your benchmarks and commitments are going to be on recovery.
Exactly. So a little bit moving from donors to management, a question came in from Bill. But how are you able to get buy-in from senior leadership of the board over the time and cost involved? How did you deal with comments like, quote unquote, at my last organization, we did an ERP for half the cost and half the time, and that was great?
Yeah. The first step was, it's when you have a hodgepodge of systems and difficulty implementing a reporting or data strategy because you've got a lot of shadow IT and under the desk systems, and so when you want a quarterly report, it takes you 2 weeks and 6 people to go into a conference room to invent something. So that was step one, right? That this should be dashboard driven. This should be information that's always at the fingertips of our executive team and our board, and our executive team and board recognized that. So there was an understanding of the need, just in terms of needing the information. From a cost perspective, the cost of this implementation is on par with other ERP implementations I've done in for-profit, and we were lucky enough to have some board members that had similar experiences and some executive team members that had similar experiences. And so while I think our numbers are high for the sector, it's not high when you look at a comparable for-profit organization making this kind of investment. This is generally in line, and this is for just the ERP implementation, for about a year and a half of doing the analysis work and organizational redesign work and all the positioning we needed to do before we even got to system selection and design and build, all the way through to launch and then some sustainment support post-launch. This will be about a $10 million project.
Wow. That does require some senior leadership and board buy-in, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's a huge investment for us, especially when you consider we're 97% grant driven.
Yeah. What's your vision for ongoing sustainment, and how do you envision that working?
Yeah, and so this goes into how I think about the technology team here and how we continue to evolve. I talk about how we're really in the 4th generation of what the team structure and services look like, and evolving those services towards having IT business partners and, rather than kind of traditionally structured staff. So we will have a product owner for this who will live in finance, and a sustainment team that will be made up of subject matter experts across different key areas pulled out of that change agent group, who will take the first line of requests, decide whether or not it's a training issue or a true change. That will funnel into a product owner. That product owner will vet all of that, make sure there are no collisions in the stories that come in, do the sizing with the team, and then all the backlog grooming and sequencing of implementation. So we'll run it in an agile way. With a defined product owner in finance, and then defined roles elsewhere in the organization, including analysis services from within technology.
Fantastic. A couple questions have come in around the specific functions or modules of the ERP you implemented. David suggested maybe holding that up against the NGO reference model. Is it finance only? Is it human resources?
Mm-hmm.
What are the components?
Yeah, really interesting question. And so, and this goes back to the question about change fatigue and how much we wanted to take on at any one time. So our intent is that we will continue implementing different modules. We're implementing the finance module is what we're focusing on, and that will eliminate probably about 17 different internal systems and consolidate the organization on a single financial tool. The next one up will be HRIS, and we'll look to migrating off our existing HRIS system into this. We need to do some analysis there, of course. And we'll look at the resource management and project management and contracts management as those features flesh out in the business world platform.
So a couple questions have come in relative to who has helped you do this, whether it's internal IT only. Obviously, we're doing a co-presentation with Unit4 today, so they probably were part of the solution. Can you talk a little bit about what that relationship looks like and who did what?
Yeah, so we did a couple things. One is we have a dedicated project manager who runs the change effort and the technical implementation all up. That is a external contractor who reports directly to our CFO. And then we brought in a small number of people that are experienced consultants who have done ERP implementations before to run the different work streams, like procure to pay, for example. And they partner with the different finance teams and change agents to define the requirements and design the workflows. And then they work directly with a small number of consultants from Unit4 Professional Services. And so we went with Unit4 directly to do the initial configurations, and have recently also added consultants from a couple outside organizations, one from Agilix and one from systems accountants to augment that team.
Well, excellent. When you got started here, did you assess maturity or readiness for implementation for certain business functions? For example, finance would be the most ready, but on the program side, maybe not.
Yeah, and believe it or not, I did that in 2010 with Accenture. So I brought Accenture in, and we did a maturity study and a readiness study across the different big initiatives. And it was precisely because of that question about, hey, technology, can't you just implement a new tool for finance? And so needed to walk through the organization on, we can, it's a big project, it's not ready, and this is what doing a project that's not ready costs in terms of time, money, and pain. Yeah, so that was actually fairly effective, and got us a certain way down the road on getting people to think about approaching this project in a different way.
There was a question relative to the field that came in. How do you deal with lack of digital literacy in the field?
So the roles, there are different roles that people will be working on here. There's a very general question there, and so I'll answer the very general question, which is we recently established a role, repurposed another role on the team, and created a role that reports into the director for global infrastructure that's focused on communication, collaboration, and IT services. And so help desk rolls up under that function, and that's where we're shifting roles into being more business partners and thinking more about what are the small number of systems that we're going to place bets on, like Skype for Business or Okta or Wombat or what have you, and what kind of training do we provide, what kind of partnership do we need to do with HR to think about onboarding and skills, what do we do on tools like Salesforce to think about badges and helping people help themselves in adoption. So we've recently focused on creating a role to help with that exact problem. For this project in particular, this is where we're trying to focus with those key resources and bring those key resources along through the project. So, when we get to the point where we're launching, they will have seen and worked with the project for months at that point. Most of the staff are going to experience Business World because that's going to be where they submit their time. And it's a smaller number of staff that will be creating proposal budgets or doing other activities that require a deeper knowledge. But we're trying to bring along as many people as possible so that they're a part of the process over the months leading to launch.
Excellent. Another question around implementation. Scott says we're using Aggresso as well. Are you live now, or how many countries are you live in? And
no, we are not live now. Yeah, so this is where it's maybe a little bit awkward for me to talk about it, and I've certainly talked to Jim and others about what kind of story I think we can tell now versus later, and why this is really a story about what did we do to even make this possible to fund and execute within PATH, and we're not talking about how we're a successful customer yet because we haven't gone live, and we're planning on going live in December 31st. So we're just coming out of build phase.
The follow-up question there was, is your local staff coming in via Citrix, or is it directly into SA?
We're planning on using Business World On as much as possible. That said, there's some functionality that is not yet migrated from the desktop to their online product. So for that functionality, we will be using the Citrix connection, which gives me heartburn.
We have about 5 more minutes, and we've got plenty more questions. While we're addressing those questions, I'm going to turn on the webinar satisfaction survey, so people can actually go right on the screen there and enter answers there, and I certainly would appreciate that. But back to you, Erik. No ERP meets 100% of the needs of an organization. What was the process of making trade-off decisions, and how did you get buy-in for the trade-offs?
Yeah, boy, and then you get people that have real attachment to their current systems. That if you've got a team that has a really bespoke system that they've been using for 10 years, and then Business World doesn't do exactly what that bespoke system was custom designed for them to do. Boy, that's hard. So we have a couple of layers of governance in the project. So the first layer is there are workstream teams that we're trying to drive decisions down into the organization as much as possible, and have done a lot of work. And I think the teams are doing a fantastic job in thinking about the future and questioning assumptions, and have some drum beats that we try to hit around simplicity. So that's the first layer. Is we hope that those workstream teams resolve it amongst the workstream teams, but there are certainly times where it bubbles up to the next layer, which is a strategy team, and that's myself, our CFO, our controller, and our head of FP&A. And we meet twice a week and look at any issues that are or questions that are coming up. An example might be how do we do approvals for bid and proposal funds, or how do we manage all of our contracts, our awards, and our sub-agreements in Salesforce? How do we approve payments? In which system do we use to approve payments? If the project team's using Salesforce to manage kind of the log frame, but a payment comes due, do they have to switch systems or not? And people don't want to switch context. So making some of those decisions, or we may, as we're learning more about Business World On, there may be functionality that isn't quite ready, that we had assumed was going to be in Business World, but now needs to be in Salesforce. And so we have a governance structure that takes all of that with input from the team. And the structure typically is that the project manager and the workstream lead will present to that strategy team what the issues are and what the options and potential solutions are. And we have a decision-making framework, Rapid Eye, if people are familiar with Rapid Eye, where we define who ultimately has the decision-making authority, who's informed, who, if anyone, has veto power, and how do we communicate it.
Oh, very interesting. I think we have time for one last question, and maybe I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here, but can you talk specifically about why you've been working with Unit4?
Why Unit4 as a product? We had a very long and thorough RFP process, and I'm happy to share what that process looked like, where we cast a pretty wide net in what we wanted initially to look at. In looking at our business and what we actually need, which features of an ERP do we need, what solutions do we already have in place for things like CRM with Salesforce. We decided we didn't want to go with a tier 1 solution like PeopleSoft. We felt that probably was overkill for the size and complexity of PATH, and wanted to focus on something that was very good at project-based accounting. And through the evaluation process, that aggregated team, Unit4 bubble to the top for a lot of very good reasons, and happy to share that criteria. In terms of working with Unit4 on the professional services engagement, we hoped, first of all, that we thought the resources that Unit4 brought forward were resources that were experienced in the sector and experienced with some of the organizations that I see have representatives on the call here today. And that made us feel good that they had some people in their PS organization that had familiarity with our sector and were able to speak our language a little bit. And also the world of business world consulting in North America is a little sparse right now, and I think Unit4 is a little bit of a victim of its own success right now in how its resources appear a but stretched, and organizations like Agilix and systems accountants are frantically trying to fill the gap. But we had confidence when we launched the project that Unit4 could bring experienced resources to the team.
Fantastic. Well, Erik, we are over time, and I certainly appreciate all of this, the wealth of information you shared today. You've generated, I think, the most questions that we ever had in any of these NetHope Solutions Center webinars. So I thank the audience also for all the inquiries. So it just remains for me to thank Jim, thank you, Erik, and the audience for a very, very informative session. We'll be sending up follow-up emails and point you to recordings and the materials here. And for some of the questions we may not have gotten to, I'll work with Erik to see if we can do a Q&A document and post that as well. So with that, thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Great. Thanks, everyone.